When Minecraft was released in 2011, its creators likely failed to observe the unnerving parallels between the premise of their game and our species' self-imposed reversal of evolution. In Minecraft, the player manipulates a speechless human entity surrounded by an abundance of simplistic blocks consisting of various elements which overall contribute towards the systematic creation of infrastructure and goods. The result is something of a micro-society that, in several uncanny aspects, mirrors the circumstances of our own. What began as a recreational tool meant to consistently challenge one's creativity under the guise of harmless fun can now be seen as both a foretelling and foreboding of the state we as humankind have sustained for generations with no true end in sight. As previously stated, Minecraft's objective is achieving a sense of craftsmanship while bound to the game's limitation of a three-dimensional cube being the player's only medium. While rudimentary in concept, potential lies in the surprising flexibility the simulation provides whilst combined with critical thinking and, by extension, a necessity for such thinking. That necessity is survival. Whether one furnishes a 5-story castle that boasts towering pillars of cobblestone amidst ironclad walls, or a dirt shack hardly spacious enough for 2 players, the principle of Minecraft remains unchanged as shelter serves as the wall between players and outside dangers. With the descent of the virtual sun comes a horde of inhuman creatures that relentlessly pursue the player. This is much like the struggle of early man, as he realized his kind was not the only one to roam Earth. Man, who had little more than his hands and stones, was faced with creatures that could tear through his flesh effortlessly and render him prey. Likewise, in their endless pursuit, Minecraft's monstrous demons target players in an assumption of dominance. It was in defiance of this primitive struggle that man became the alpha species, bearing a makeshift weapon that would pierce his foes. Minecraft's rendition of this usurpation came in the form of swords and armor, which both aided in defending against the unwanted predators of the night. A notable shift arises in the biological hierarchy, as man, or in the game's case, player, reduces predators to prey, to something less of a threat and more so an opportunity. Man soon realized that beast was not a hindrance to his transient longevity, rather a supplement which, in proper utilization, could increase one's chances of survival. It was no longer a simple battle of life and death, rather a means of gathering sustenance or clothing. Players of Minecraft similarly discovered that their fight was not a fruitless one, as upon defeating enemies, they found items that would otherwise remain elusive in tranquil gameplay, providing an incentive to engage the abominations in combat rather than flee. Observed in these motions is the advancement of both man and player's role in their respective environments, which, by today's standards, may seem basic, but alas, for early man and early player, this spelled a significant uprising in the face of life's nemesis, hereby known as survival. It is this very dominance that, as we will see in time, tore our species apart into a dysfunctional riot of rivalry and senseless opposition. But at that point in his newfound glory, however, man was at his evolutionary prime, unintentionally discovering the idea of reproduction after learning to sustain daily life within the confines of his protective home. Females, to him, were a puzzling concept. They were much like males in general physique, only bearing different features that made them susceptible to advances from their hairier counterparts. He could not grasp why he wanted such a mate, but man knew that he wanted the mate regardless. One would assume that the resulting competition for women would bear negativity upon society, although it is in fact the contrary, as the increasing desire for a feminine partner only bolstered women's apparent worth, and thus more men actively sought family, ignorant to the actual effect of such urges in the form of rising population. To return to the other subject at hand, Minecraft, beyond its intended surface, saw the same advances from its male players. Initially, females were scarce among the still-growing user base, so scarce that in the event one did appear, male players attempted flattery by showering them in hard-earned materials, displaying their houses pridefully, and even shielding them from other male players with violence. Once again, Mojang's open-world computer game precisely mimics the conventions of ancient human chivalry to an almost startling degree by merging primal instinct with the necessary tools for an environment ruled by superiority. Players unknowingly carry on mankind's reputation of being a race sovereign by the idea of gaining what is lacked, or otherwise stripping the unobtainable away from others, thus marking the beginning of our downfall. With the discovery of women also came the discovery of a radiant element that proved to be either resourceful or destructive depending on one's intent. Fire, as it was named, seemed unnatural to man, so it scared him greatly at first before its practical use was invented. On cold nights when man shivered in darkness, kindling flames could not only warm him, but also light his shadowed path. Meat could be basked in the strange orange force until it gained a brown coating, improving its edibility significantly. And yet, when man held a finger to fire, why did it bring pain? In Minecraft, fire is equally practical due to its use in furnaces and torches. It is only natural for exploits to be discovered in any system when a certain level of power is granted to an individual. Minecraft is no exception. Using the flint and steel tool allows players to instantaneously apply fire to a compatible block in the world around them. In a game where wooden abodes are the norm, it is not difficult to see the issue in allowing players the power of spreading flame. Conflict drives them to spite each other in an act which has been dubbed griefing, meaning the swift deconstruction of another's home as an act of petty revenge that is ultimately no different than man's envious crimes against his fellows. It is interesting that Minecraft, a fictitious setting centered around building, encapsulates psychological disputes between men in such a simplistic depiction that it reveals truth within our own lives, begging the question, have we truly evolved? Fire is obviously a deadly force in the physical realm, but it must also be symbolized on the metaphorical plane as well. The flames ushered by flint and steel represent man's duality. What he can do in this world, he can also undo in others, even if lives are ruined as a result. Man can create and destroy at any given moment. Like the griefer, he does not see consequence in actions of ruin because the primal pursuit of dominance once again rears its ugly head until man feels adequate with himself. Humans are constantly in opposition of one another. Just as games go, there will never be two winners. One must always suffer while the other basks in victory. But in defiance of this undeniable fact, man enacts revenge with his flames until one or both of the parties involved have eventually conceded or perished. Have we truly evolved if the power meant to enhance our lives only breaks them apart? Fires continue to rage among both men and players alike. Minecraft allows its users to unite in factions that, at times, engage other groups for supremacy. Horses are added to the game's assortment of animals to serve as steeds for barbaric marauders on their digital conquests. It is no coincidence that this shift in focus from industry to clashing swords can be directly compared to man's pursuit of blood and iron during the age of colonization. As they came together with a common goal, men found numbers and weapons to be a justification for enacting revolution when national matters shied from their favor. While there is no corrupt governing figure within Minecraft, the players instead brawl amongst themselves for even the most trivial of disagreements. This depiction, while seemingly childish at face value, burrows to the core of mankind's endless bout between the ruler and the ruled, between one army and another, and so on, because in the end, despite which ranks each side may hold, the fight will always be man versus man. The aforementioned universal rule of life's trials birthing only one winner at a time comes into play once again, as the losers of wars, reality has ordained, either plot for revenge on their triumphant enemies or simply die beforehand. Survival has outlived its importance in the spectrum of man's ambition, for now that he has found stability in living, he yearns for greater purpose, just as a Minecraft player reaches beyond the shackles of his cobblestone walls for challenges surpassing ordinary life. But do not be mistaken. It matters not whether man is faced with displeasing circumstances in his country or not, because like a spoiled offspring, he will always wish for something greater, something to validate his otherwise dull existence in this world. Man and player take up a sword to distract themselves from an average life that, while stable, has no merit in the grand scheme of things, or so they believe. By banding together, the men confirm to each other the significance in what they fight for, when in truth, this is but a farce meant to excuse one's selfish desire for fulfillment in his limited time. And so, because they proceed to blame rulers, or even each other, lives are swept up by a senseless hurricane of self-importance to ironically contort the meaning of survival into the deaths of countless people. Since then, nothing has fundamentally changed. Humans continue to strive for a false sense of worth while hiding behind terms such as politics or social justice. To suggest that man, who was once a spear-wielding simpleton, could gradually improve yet suddenly take a step backward on the evolutionary scale may sound extreme, but observing current events in our society reveals a trend of man halting to a standstill with none other than himself. Perhaps life was better in the olden days of hunting and gathering, wherein the undeveloped minds of our ancestors knew not the overcomplicated vices that would fester in their descendants. A species that started no differently than that of an animal's once followed the natural moral code of helping its brethren in the name of survival, but now, in its undying discourse, man slowly feeds away at itself, and yet wonders why our society continues to degrade. Too stubborn, the primal fool is left in a cycle of suffering before his imminent demise at the hands of either another human or himself. Too stubborn, he insists dominance despite the dominance itself having no justification to preside over any other fellow man. Though one may peruse this writing as nonsensical rhetoric meant to instill fear in the reader, be warned that the truth is not always so saccharine, and more often than not berates a guilty party indiscriminate of their opinion. In this case, that guilty party is we as humans. Denial of this fact will only lead to the eventual downfall of human civilization, and do note that it will be a long, grueling descent down the slope of our self-erected disorder. One may be pondering, what will become of Minecraft? Alas, unlike the sentient beings it portrays, the game is but a fictitious distraction that will live on in popularity. Perhaps it would be wise of mankind to follow its example before Minecraft outlives us.